Welcome back. We are standing by for the Prime Minister to address the nation on what has been described as a major cyber attack aimed at the government. It was meant to happen at 9 o'clock. We're not quite sure why it's been delayed, but we'll bring that media conference to you live when it happens.
Yeah, Nine political reporter Jonathan Kersley joins us now from Canberra. I'm sure the corridors of power are abuzz with all kinds of information and speculation at the moment, Jono.
It's been the end of a long-sitting fortnight, so when the Prime Ministerial alert goes off for 9 o'clock on a Friday morning, there's certainly a hive of activity. There's a hive of activity when the Prime Minister sends out an alert at any time, but we are expecting him to front the cameras. Well, it was due to be 13 or 14 minutes ago now, but he will be talking about a cyber intrusion on a massive scale. The suspicion is that this is a state-sponsored attack. We don't expect the Prime Minister to name or outline which country or state sponsor is likely to be responsible for this attack. What we know is that it was aimed at government institutions. It was aimed at the private sector. This was on a massive scale. It really is quite concerning for authorities. What they will be satisfied with, though, is that there has been a trigger. They have been able to identify it, but what we don't know yet is just how much data, how much information was potentially exposed or even at worst fallen into the wrong hands. So we're expecting the Prime Minister to wander into that media conference any moment now, really. The Prime Minister 14 minutes late this morning.
Yeah, which makes padding very, very difficult when you've got no information. You're doing an exceptional job. Because I wondered where you got that information too, because when they come, if you get a Prime Ministerial alert, take us inside all that. You get an alert and it says what?
Yeah, so normally what takes place is we get advised before the Prime Minister speaks of what time he is going to speak, where he is going to speak, and occasionally the subject matter, though. Sometimes that requires a little bit of digging, and Nine's political editor, Chris Ullman, is actually at that Prime Ministerial media conference with the Prime Minister this morning. He broke this news this morning of the cyber intrusion aimed at government institutions, the private sector, a massive scale. He will be asking the Prime Minister questions very, very shortly. And as soon as Scott Morrison walks into that room and starts telling us a little bit more detail about what is going on, then we will be able to get more answers for you on just exactly what has been exposed, what is at risk, the information that could have fallen into the wrong hands, and maybe, just maybe, but highly unlikely, who was responsible for this. Because I was saying before, only once before has an Australian government named a state actor responsible for a cybersecurity attack. So the Prime Minister, hopefully not too far away, we will bring his media conference live to you on the Nine Network as soon as we can.
All right, well, Jono, we're hearing that he's just walking towards the room now, Jono, so he's almost there. But I do
Prime Minister is on his way.
Okay, well, that's coming from our Canberra bureau down there, that he's walking the corridor, so we're expecting him to walk into the room there at any stage. As Jono was just saying, to announce the fact that there has been a major cyber attack on both government agencies and the private sector. It was interesting there with, here comes the Prime Minister now, across to Canberra live.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. I'm going to read to you a prepared statement. Protecting Australia's economy, national security and sovereignty is my government's top priority, keeping Australians safe. I'm here today to advise you that based on advice provided to me by our cyber experts, Australian organisations are currently being targeted by a sophisticated state-based cyber actor. This activity is targeting Australian organisations across a range of sectors, including all levels of government, industry, political organisations, education, health, essential service providers, and operators of other critical infrastructure. We know it is a sophisticated state-based cyber actor because of the scale and nature of the targeting and the tradecraft used. The Australian government is aware of and alert to the threat of cyber attacks. Our government's expert agency on cyber matters is the Australian Cyber Security Centre. It has already published a range of technical advisory notices in recent times to alert potential targets and has been briefing states and territories on risks and mitigations. Regrettably, this activity is not new, but frequency has been increasing. The ACSC has also been actively working with targeted organisations to ensure that they have appropriate technical mitigations in place and their defences are appropriately raised. Thanks to the cooperation between the affected entities, the Australian Cyber Security Centre and a range of private cyber security providers, we have been working together to thwart this activity. The purpose of raising this matter here today is to simply raise awareness of these specific risks. They are not new risks, but they are specific risks and the targeted activities, and to advise you how Australians, and particularly these organisations, can take action to protect themselves. The government's 2016 cyber security strategy backed a $230 million investment over 4 years. This has strengthened Australia's cyber security foundations and stimulated private sector investment in cyber security and positioned Australia as a regional cyber security leader. The government will release a new cyber security strategy in the coming months, and that will include significant further investments. We have also invested a further $156 million to build cyber resilience and expand the cyber workforce as one of our election commitments, and we invested additional funding for a whole of government cyber uplift program. But in this environment, of course, and increasingly, there is always more to do, and we must continue to work together. Cyber security is a whole of community effort, government, industry, and individuals. That is why we are raising this matter today, to raise awareness of this important issue and to encourage organisations, particularly those in the health critical infrastructure and essential services, to take expert advice and to implement technical defences to thwart this malicious cyber activity. Australia has some of the best agencies in the world on these issues, and Australians, like I believe, have confidence in those organisations, and they are doing their job and they're doing it effectively. But that is not to diminish or discount the risks that we now face in this modern world. These risks are present. They will continue to be present. It is part of the world in which we live, and it is why these investments are necessary and the protections we put in place are necessary. The way we have to work together is necessary, and we will continue to do everything we can to keep Australians safe. I'll ask the Minister for Defence to make a further statement, and then we have time for a few questions.
Well, thank you very much, Prime Minister. And there is no doubt that malicious cyber activity is increasing in frequency, scale, in sophistication, and also in its impact. This activity harms Australia's national security and also our economic interests. It's vital that all Australian organisations are alert to this threat and take steps to protect their own networks. All Australian organisations who might be concerned about their vulnerability to sophisticated cyber compromise can take these 3 simple steps to protect themselves. Firstly, patch your internet-facing devices promptly, ensuring that any web or email servers are fully updated with the latest software. Secondly, ensure you always use multi-factor authentication to secure your internet access infrastructure and also your cloud-based platforms. And thirdly, it's important to become an ACSC partner to ensure you get the latest cyber threat advice to protect your organisation online. Today, the Australian Cyber Security Centre and the Department of Home Affairs have published a very detailed technical advisory, which is available at cyber.gov.au. Now, this advisory provides all the necessary steps that Australian organisations must take to detect and also to mitigate this threat. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank sincerely the Australian Cyber Security Centre and the Department of Home Affairs for their work on this matter. They 24/7 protect the Australian government, Australian organisations and individuals. Finally, can I remind all Australians that cyber security is a shared responsibility of us all. For further advice on how to protect yourself from cyber threats, I urge all Australians today to visit cyber.gov.au for all of the information you need to keep your organisation and your family safe online. Thank you, PM.
Thank you, Linda. Just as also a matter of process, advised the Leader of the Opposition's office last night at about 7:30 last night. I was also able to get that same message to the Premiers and Chief Ministers, and a number of them have already been involved working with our agencies on these issues. And in addition to that, there'll be further technical briefings conducted with the states and territories today to reinforce the point. We raised this issue today not to raise concerns in the public's mind, but to raise awareness in the public's mind. This is the world that we live in. These are the threats that we have to deal with. The fact that these threats present is not a surprise in this world in which we now live, and the actions that we are taking are the actions that we need to take, and we will continue to be as ever vigilant as we possibly can be. Mark.
So, Prime Minister, Australians...
The advice I have is that the investigations conducted so far have not revealed any large-scale personal data breaches.
Ian, has this been raised, or have you raised it with any other governments, leaders overseas? Is there anything that can be done with our allies to work against this attack and protect ourselves?
Well, we work closely with all, particularly our allies and partners, when it comes to managing issues of cybersecurity threats. That is a constant topic, as you'd expect, particularly through Five Eyes Partners. I spoke to Boris Johnson last night about a range of matters, including this one, and there are other engagements with our partners and allies on this overnight.
Which state was it, and if you won't tell us that, is this the action of a friendly nation?
I'd simply say this, and that is the threshold for public attribution on a technical level is extremely high. And so Australia doesn't engage lightly in public attributions, and when and if we choose to do so is also always done in the context of what we believe to be in our strategic national interests. What I simply can confirm is there are not a large number of state-based actors that can engage in this type of activity, and it is clear based on the advice that we have received that this has been done by a state-based actor with very, very significant capabilities.
Is the action of a friendly nation?
No, I've made my statement on the issues you've raised.
Just to understand scale, Prime Minister, there's quite a list of sectors and levels of government that you're talking about. Can you break that down into entities? Are we talking hundreds here, of thousands who have been targeted?
Well, there are many that have been targeted, but in terms of their success, that is not as significant. And as I said, the investigations undertaken to date are, as I relayed to Mark in his questioning. So we will continue to work closely with the agency. As I said, today is about raising the awareness. And obviously, those who are engaged in this are not doing this to help us. That's certainly not their intention. And so you could describe it as malicious. And that is why our awareness levels need to be raised. And I really do want to thank particularly the private sector operators that we've been working closely with. The ASD has a very good relationship with organisations around the country, and the contact and the disclosure that takes place, the engagement of our agencies working closely with them has been excellent. And I want to thank them for their vigilance, but it is a reminder, again, that these things don't just occur in relation to state-based actors. We're aware of criminal-based cyber activity that is we're aware of has been affecting other corporates at the moment. You'll be aware that there are some other cases that are going on at the moment regarding Lion and a few others. They are not related to these events. They are other events. Catherine.
Prime Minister, when did this attack start, and when was it brought to your attention? And also, you said you're raising it to raise awareness in the community and business and governments, but is there something about the scale of this attack that is unprecedented?
Well, I don't know if I'd use that word. As you recall, some time ago, I spoke of these issues in the Parliament, and so this is ongoing activity. It hasn't just started. This is a constant threat to Australia, as it is to many other nations, and you'd be aware of many other nations having highlighted similar activity in their jurisdictions. So this has been a constant issue for Australia to deal with. And so I wouldn't say that there's been any one event or any one instance. I mean, we have been dealing with cybersecurity threats from state-based actors for some time.
And we will leave that press conference there with the Prime Minister, and we'll have continuing coverage of that story on 9 News throughout the day.
Right.